Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Christina McNeil, and this is MB12 for Wednesday, April 4th, 2012, broadcasting from the Cable 12 studios on Robinson Road. In news tonight, some prominent pastors accuse the government of holding the electorate hostage, a call for a referendum on gambling, education officials discuss the latest school break-in, another round of industrial action possible for air traffic controllers, and a special day for the Salvation Army. We have those stories and much more coming up tonight. Your MB12 starts right now. Thanks for joining us. A religious leader is accusing successive governments of continuing to hold this country hostage by choosing an election date every 5 years. As the general election approaches, he's lobbying for the Bahamas to join the short list of countries with a fixed election date. But not all religious leaders support that suggestion. Fanique Toot reports.
For weeks now, leaders of the Progressive Liberal Party have been calling on Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham to ring the bell. However, one local religious leader says it would not have to come to that if the government would simply set a fixed date for general elections. Head of Great Commission Ministries, Bishop Walter Hanchel, criticized this and previous governments for using the election date as a political tool.
Because the country has been held hostage for all these years. Since independence, or even before independence.
Yes, before.
And if that date is fixed, it would eliminate a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, and it would take the power from the prime minister, any prime minister who's in office, to manipulate the system. You don't need to change that.
That's not true.
Well, hold on. We don't need to change our democracy to do that. That only calls for a law to be passed in Parliament. The reason why that is not being done is because none of the prime ministers saw fit to do it.
Fixed-term elections are common for most mayors and presidents. In the United States, presidential elections occur every 4 years on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. In Canada, some jurisdictions have passed legislation fixing election dates. Religious leaders seem to be divided on this issue, though. There were a few tense moments during today's news conference as Bishop Hanchel gave his views. Senior pastor of New Covenant Baptist Church, Bishop Simeon Hall, says he prefers the Westminster system, which we currently use. Here's what Bishop Hall does have a problem with. He says major political parties made such a big deal about suspending their constituency office openings and rallies during Easter week. However, he says he's still hearing and seeing those political ads.
I thought it would have been proper for there to have been the full suspension of political rallies, and I think that is true, but the withdrawal of their political ads to show some deference for the sanctity and solemnity of this week. And I understand that the rallies have been cancelled, but not so with the ads. And I think we need a time to center down. Our people need a rest.
Bishop Hall says he would particularly like for all political ads to be suspended on Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Monday. He also urged politicians to take the high road and stop the mudslinging. He says going below the belt is for mental midgets.
You expect differences and strong differences, and that's fine. But you know where you got to be talking about people's family and people's wives or spouses. That's for those mental midgets.
We're not concerned about people's bedroom business and all of that. There's the private and public life, and these people come to serve us as public servants. And yes, we hold them accountable for having good morals. But there is no place in the election process for any kind of mudslinging.
Religious leaders say the various political parties appear to be running cleaner campaigns these days, and they hope it stays that way in the lead up to the upcoming general election. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonique Tude.
Local pastors also spoke out on gambling in the country. Web shops seem to be popping up on just about every street corner throughout New Providence, becoming more accessible to Bahamians interested in buying numbers and making quick cash. Bishop Walter Hanchel from Great Commission Ministries says this nation's leaders must stop trying to be politically correct and address what he feels has developed into a gambling culture.
It is now almost acceptable to gamble. We say that gambling is illegal except for the casinos, but the fact is these gambling houses have licenses to operate, and they're operating right in the front of the police, in the front of everybody, openly and blatantly. I saw a gambling house right next door to a court, and something is wrong. Either we must address it, because drugs and gambling are related. They all, in my opinion, they all are criminal acts, and we need to deal with it.
Hanchel, who admits that he stopped gambling 30 years ago, says he's also against foreigners being allowed to come into this country to gamble in local casinos. However, he acknowledges that casinos help our tourism industry. Reverend Victor Cooper from the Bahamas Christian Council believes the government should hold a referendum on gambling to let Bahamians determine whether numbers houses should stay or go.
There must be the willingness on the part of the government
To regularize?
well, to have a look at it again, perhaps to put it to referendum, let the people make a decision, because the reality is, and sometimes we overlook this aspect of it, these gambling houses are making a lot of money and not paying any taxes whatsoever.
But there are people who are gambling.
Right, and that's the other part of it. And so there must be some serious consideration given again to this whole issue of gambling. Perchance with the Electorate making a decision as to whether or not this is the way we want to go, and then how does the country benefit in return from all those monies that are being expended.
Members of the Bahamas Air Traffic Controllers Union are on standby regarding possible industrial action that may take place over the long Easter holiday weekend if they don't get the response to the issues they have from the relevant authorities. Paige Ferguson spoke with the leader of the union today. She has that story.
The union leader said there is some satisfaction in the progress being made, in that the union was able to meet with the Prime Minister and relevant ministers last evening. However, he said the outcome of that meeting was not completely satisfactory. He said for now, union members are in crisis mode and are ready to act if and when the call is made.
Some people traveling through Lynden Pinling International Airport this weekend have expressed anxiety about what will happen. But according to BATCU President Roscoe Perpall, there's no certainty that the union will strike this weekend, or for that matter, that it will not. Some of the union's issues were addressed following a meeting with the Prime Minister Tuesday night, and though Perpall said executives of the Air Traffic Union were somewhat disappointed by what the Prime Minister offered, he admitted the meeting was fair.
We did not accomplish all of our objectives. There are some items that are outstanding, and as a result of that meeting, we met immediately with our membership late into the night last night. Our membership has advised that we proceed with caution right now, because we do not want to send a wrong message either to the governing side, where we feel that there's still possibility for settlement on a number of other issues that were not quite resolved yesterday. Nor do we want to send a bad message at this point to the flying public, and in particular the airline operators.
The main issues facing the union include a damaged air traffic control room that has not been repaired since Hurricane Irene last year. The union also wants a new industrial agreement, promotions for several senior officers, and a new radar system for the control room. Air traffic controllers recently operated on work to rule, which delayed flights significantly and caused major operation issues at LPIA. Perpall said the Prime Minister expressed his disappointment with the action.
He have expressed some concerns with the negative impact of work action on the aviation industry, as well as our country's economic. I've met with the airline operators, and they on Monday, and they too have expressed some concerns. We are not out to destroy the industry. We were trying to have our issues amicably addressed. We have an opportunity to do so, and with that in mind, we would hope that everyone comes out of this in a win-win situation.
So are you backing down?
Definitely not.
At this point, the union president said he just wants to preserve the industrial environment as it is and will avoid further industrial action if at all possible. However, he said it's not completely off the table.
I don't wish to put in anyone's mind, in particular at this point, that there will be work stoppage, but everything is still being discussed.
When is the next meeting with your members?
It'll be right now we are basically in crisis mode, so they are on notice to be called in on short notice at any point.
Another round of industrial action at LPIA has been described as something that would be detrimental not only for the airport, but also the Bahamian tourism product and the entire Bahamian economy. Reporting for MB12, I'm Paige Ferguson.
Well, Education Director Lionel Sands today spoke to the need for additional security to protect our country's schools in light of the recent armed robberies that have occurred at CV Bethel and Doris Johnson Senior High Schools. Yesterday, a security officer was tied up and blindfolded before being beaten by 4 masked men during an armed robbery at Doris Johnson Senior High School. The culprits got away with a television, a number of cell phones, some laptops, jewelry that had been confiscated from students, and an undetermined amount of cash. Sands says as a result of yesterday's armed robbery, a number of security measures will be beefed up.
So we're seeking to bolster the number of persons we have on any given shift. And so we're looking at that, and also the CCTV that we're hoping to install in all of our schools. These are some of the measures that we put in place to kind of guard against the kind of thing that you've seen at Doris Johnson and all the other schools where we've had those kinds of situations.
Sands says it is not clear as to why there was only one security guard on the shift when the armed robbery occurred. As far as he knows, that's not a normal practice.
I do not know exactly why we just had one on that particular night, but usually we have at least 2 persons on a night shift, and so perhaps the other person who should have been there might have been sick, and so I'm not sure yet exactly why that isn't so. Why that was not so where 2 persons should have been on the shift, but a minimum of 2 persons on a shift in a school the size of Doris Johnson, and it just happened that when one person was on that particular night, the incident occurred.
The education director says the extent of the damage of yesterday's armed robbery was the worst he's ever seen.
Do not know what they were trying to do, because much of the things that people would normally steal, they didn't steal them, they just break them up, which didn't make any sense. It would suggest that, but I do not know if that is the case. But what we've seen, it would suggest that the person just had a vendetta out against the school.